Is Michigan still philosophically a bully ball program, or is it transitioning into something more modern? We'll break it down on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday. We're back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Thank you to all of our everydayers who watch or listen to the show every single day. Also, big thank you for making us your first listen. First, we're going to go into offensive philosophy and where the program appears to be going, and then 5 players who can help themselves out the most this spring. Finally, we will talk some basketball and the 30-point win over UCLA. Let's get into all of it. All right, first, just to pull up this website here. This is going to be a really interesting transition because, yes, we all know that Kyle Whittingham talks often about physicality and winning the trenches. So it's already a bit of a mentality fit, culture fit. I had a word and I completely lost it there. But so we already know that. But then obviously the way Michigan was built before is it's like, we're going to just tear your heart out. Good luck. You're not going to be able to come back once we take a lead. And that was not even just 21 through 23. It was 2018 as well, right? Like, people weren't calling it the boa constrictor, but they were, certainly that was the case then. And, obviously it was worse versions of even the 2018 team in the last 2 years under Sharon Moore. But at the same time, despite that, this isn't exactly what it's going to be. Now, we're not going deep into schematics or even into really truly schematics at all here, because that's just not my lane. I'm going to stay in the lanes that I'm capable of. But I will at least have noticed the one thing that is different here. And that is that Michigan is professed by Kyle Whittingham to be a 11 personnel team. That means one wide receiver, not one wide receiver. Okay, great. One running back, one tight end, 3 wide receivers. That is the base offense for Michigan. We are accustomed to it being more of a 12 personnel offense. Sometimes 21, sometimes 22, sometimes 23, right? Like, it's like they have different versions that they have trotted out, but it's been rare, although more likely this last year that you see them in 11 personnel or, even go 4 wide or something like that. Now, from like the word just keeps, it's like, you ever get that where you got a word that you keep wanting to use and it's right there, but it's just like, you just can't quite find it. Utah last year was the #2 rushing offense in the country. Okay. With Jason Beck leading the charge. Michigan, you would think is like, yeah, that's like probably one of the best. I mean, they're one of the better rushing teams. I mean, they were good. They were 14th in the country. Michigan was averaging 210.15 yards per game. Utah was 266.31. So that's already different. And Jason Beck, again, this dude is consistent now. He had New Mexico in 2024 was the #2 rushing offense in the country. Both were the 4th overall offenses in the country. He was averaging 253.58 yards per game. So they are still very much within that wheelhouse. But here's the rub here where things can be a bit different. They aren't necessarily like we're going to pass the skin off the ball, right? They were 82nd in passing offense last year. And I'm sorry, this is too small for me to see. I got to lean forward. 216.6 yards per game. Now, what was Michigan? Michigan was 107th. So marginally better, little bit more consistent. Michigan was averaging 186 yards per game. So marginally better, but he was a bit better in 2024 with New Mexico. And I think I can just pull this back. 61st, so kind of middling in the country, and we're averaging 230. I think you can see a case here because they didn't have like all the receivers and stuff. Like, granted, they had JJ Buchanan, whatever, but like I feel like they've got a little bit more going for them in Ann Arbor compared to what Jason Beck has worked with in his previous 2 stops. So with that too, I think with being an 11 personnel, you're looking at what is the ability to to be able to run the football without necessarily committing extra resources, right? I had a question in the mailbag last week of like, oh, who's going to be the fullback? We don't really even know that there is going to be a fullback. Okay, so like that's, I think, one of the things that you got to think about when it comes to where Michigan is and what this transition is going to look like. Additionally, I don't think that you can forget the fact that they've got Bryce Underwood. Devin Dampier, might be more polished, might be, more developed than Bryce Underwood. Again, you like that, though that is the difference between having like, I love doing this as cars. I love doing it that way. It's the difference between having okay, I've got a standard Dodge Challenger, or maybe like a Dodge like it was a standard Dodge Challenger and I upgraded it to the RT package. Bryce Underwood is something entirely different, right? Bryce Underwood is an F1 car. I had to go there. And no, Josiah, he's not Lance Stroll. And he's not Max Verstappen either. Okay, maybe he is Max Verstappen. I don't want Josiah to, because he's sitting here listening to this and being like, he's Max Verstappen. Like, just stop. He's Lando Norris, okay? That's where I'm at with it. He's Lando Norris. But that is it, though, right? Like, it's not even like he's a Bugatti Chiron, like I've been saying. He's an F1 car. But the thing is he is an F1 car in a mode like this. Yes, I'm mixing modes here. He's an F1 car in an era of new regulations. You're still trying to figure things out. There are very few other F1 cars out there, but there are other F1 cars out there that he's racing against, right? But generally, he's that different guy, right? Like, so that changes a bit of the calculus for how you can do things with the offense, because he can do things that Devin Dampier can't do. And here's the good thing is he can do everything Devin Dampier can do. It's just that he can do extra things. Now, the question is how do you deploy it? And you don't also necessarily need to have him be Mr. Run the Football. Because I want to note here, as I look at New Mexico, for instance, Devin Dampier in 2024 by far led the team in rushing. 155 carries, that was the most. 1166 in yards, that was the most. 19 touchdowns. Again, by far, all the most. Now, they did have another running back that was good. They had 2,000-yard rushers that year because Eli Sanders had 1,063 in rushing yards. But this is different because you don't have to do that because you have Jordan Marshall, you have Savion Hyder, you've got Bryson Cosdall, you depending on what you decide to do, you got Taylor Tatum. So that was them this past year. And let's just go back real quick. Best way to get there. Here we go. Last year, Devin Dampier wasn't the leading rusher, didn't have 1,000 yards. They did not have a 1,000-yard rusher, but they had two above 800. Devin Dampier with 835, Wayshawn Parker with 981. The next guy, Bird Ficklin, had 513. I could see a situation where Underwood is more the third rusher, but like that's something that they can do. So that kind of changes a little bit of the way that you can do things. And I think it's just going to be exciting. So I do think that they will still be physical in the trenches, right? Like that is what Kyle Whittingham has built to this point, but they can do it in a different way, in a weird way. Like when I look at it, it's actually a little bit more heartening to me, I think, because you look at it and you say, all right, if other teams stack the box, they still have found ways to be like, well, we're still going to punish you in the ground game. And that was fine in like 22 and 23, but like there's a reason why Jim Harbaugh had to say, oh, we can go by, air and we can go by land, right? Like it's because that in 2022, eventually teams were just like, we're just not, we're going to force you. Well, at least it started, we're going to force JJ to pass. And then he did. And they're like, nevertheless. And then the next year they were like, those first couple teams were like, we're just not going to let you run on us. And we are only going to let you pass on us. And JJ was like, much obliged, sirs. So I think that it's a little bit different, right? Because I think that this is a team that's going to be able to find a way to run against you no matter what. But they're also going to certainly pass the ball because we've seen that from the last two stops that Jason Beck has had. So really exciting stuff. All right, let's get into 5 players that I think can really, really help themselves. It's not the top 5. It's not ranking. It's just like these are guys that I just kind of have my eye on. So we're going to get to them here in just a moment. But before we do, let's just wait it out. There we go. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open when the pressure's on and you need the right hire. This is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I have been talking to you, companies that like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, and more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get $75 sponsored job credit to help all your job, like to help get your job. I'm just kind of riffing here. Help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. All right, so it's going to be really interesting. And people keep on asking me like, oh, winter conditioning, what's going on there? And I've seen the report from Josh Henschke that said, right, there's a lot of excitement that Rod Moore could be back. That also Savion Hyder's already turning heads. Listen, it's winter conditioning. That's like, I'm going to get that. If I do a mailbag tomorrow, I guarantee that I am going to get someone ask like, what's different with winter conditioning? How is it going? Who's standing out? And I'm not making fun of you. I'm just saying it's winter conditioning. Practice. We talking about practice, not a game, not the game. Practice. Is it funny that like that was in my lexicon back not long after it happened, because I was into the NBA back then. You know, I've had my eras, right? Like I was in my sports era back then. I wasn't even quoting AI directly. I was quoting Ted Lasso, quoting AI, because I watch more Ted Lasso than I do. That tells you where my head is at usually. Okay. I'm in like I like the film and the TV. Big you guys got to watch Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Okay, I'm telling you. Okay, I'm not even vamping here. Before we even get into the players, I gotta tell you, if you thank you for making Locked On Wolverines your first listen. We very much do appreciate it, but you got to level up. You got to go ad free. You know, it doesn't get banter free. It doesn't get riffing free, but you can go ad free. You can do that with the Everydayer Club. And it has not just an added bonus, it's the bonus. It's the whole point. It's the private Discord. I'm in there. I'm telling you things. I'm answering your questions. And I'm doing it pretty quickly and pretty openly. So that's got to be worth it, right? So, I mean, especially because just $5 a month, $50 a year. I mean, $5 a month, that is literally just skip going to Starbucks like once a month. That's it. And you would have found out about Bryson Kostal coming back and Taylor Tatum switching positions before anybody. I might not have reported the Taylor Tatum stuff publicly. I did I did all in one fell swoop right there in the Discord. So go to lockedonwolverines.supercast.com to learn more, or go to check the show notes. I spent 3 minutes. Just messing around. Okay. All right. I've got 5 players that I think can help themselves out the most. Maybe not the most of everybody, but these are the 5 guys that I pinpointed. And it's not ranked. I'm not saying like this is the one that can, when spring ball comes, all eyes are on him. And if he does well, the team is going to. No, like I'm not saying that. Okay. What I am saying is that I think that these are guys that can do some damage here. And they can really help themselves. So let's start with my number 1 here. Not ranked. Dom Nichols. Michigan has a need for some defensive linemen to step up, right? And I could have gone with interior. We're not even talking about the hire of the new DL coach. Black. Why can't I remember his first name? I don't know. I'm underslept. But I mean, that's a big deal. We'll talk about that probably sometime during the week. But I mean, they need some guys that are going to be able to step up, right? You've got John Henry Daly. You don't know how he's going to be. You've got Cam Brandt, and you've got a bunch of other guys that you're kind of just like YOLO. I don't know. Interior, you've got 3 that you're really kind of working with: Jonah Laea, Enoetta, and Trey Pierce. And there's more that I think can step up and will step up there, right? Like, we don't talk enough about Manuel Beal, who very well could be on this list, okay? Like, I think he's absolutely the type of, I mean, like, he was getting talked about in fall camp last year, like, ooh, he's kind of a dude, and we saw him out there. And he made some plays, too. I mean, it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't out there like a ton, but he kind of was out there. So Dom Nichols, though, to me, is a guy that can take a massive step forward, right? Because it's like, hey, bro, you're kind of third in line, and you could just be the second or maybe even the first guy if you really just, you know, assert yourself. So I think that this is a preparation meets opportunity type of scenario. And I think he's got the tools to be able to go out there and do it. He has the look of it. Then you could add others like Lugard Adepayi. You could add Nate Marshall. But I think Dom Nichols is the one that's kind of the most poised there. You could also add in Carter Meadows, but I think he's a year away. Even though he's a 5-star, generally we look at 5 stars and say they're ready sooner than later. Number 2, I got Chase Taylor, linebacker. And that's more because I think Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng is actually going to rise to the challenge. I have just kind of no doubt about that. As much as people like question, like, oh, well, no experience. I've reminded you, and I'm going to continue to remind you until we get into the season. And even during, especially if it happens in the season, then you're just going to hear it every day, right? You're just going to hear it every day. I'm like, Jay Hill's top tackler tends to be a sophomore linebacker. He's done it the last 2 years. Okay, so that gives you 2 options. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, who I think is already kind of poised and primed, or Chase Taylor, who we honestly saw earlier, maybe wasn't quite as flashy, but like they've always loved him. Like even when he was a recruit, like talking to people in and around the building, they're just like raving about him. And like people are just kind of like, oh, yawn, 3-star. I'm apparently really expressive when I'm tired. When I get 3 hours of sleep, I'm really expressive. So Chase Taylor's my number 2. I'm not going to expand too much on that because we're just running out of time. Number 3, I've got Channing Goodwin. That is not preparation meets opportunity. The opportunity is low because they've done all kinds of things to kind of take the job away from him, and that even started last year. So now you've got Andrew Marsh as your number 1 guy, that's the guy who directly took his job. They bring in Jamie French, who also very much directly could be taking his job. They got other guys that around there, like, you know, JJ Buchanan. I mean, I thought about putting Kendrick Bell on here because of what I know he is capable of, even though we've only seen it in spurts. Never count out a Bell. It's kind of like my Lannister always pays its debts, right? So, but Channing Goodwin, I think, is the type of dude that if he could get the drops under control, which they seem to be only an in-game problem, and which is massive, but not a practice problem. Like they called him Mr. Reliable for a reason. So I really like him there. Number 4 is Deakon Tonielli because they do, we have seen in the Beck system. I'm going to pull that back up here. Receiving here. Again, I can't read this far. I don't know what's going on with my eyes lately. Dallin Bentley was their senior tight end. Had 48 catches for 620 yards, second on the team last year. So with that, by the way, Smith Snowden had 13 receptions last year. Just FYI. Just FYI. I think it's going to be like they like to have the tight ends. Now I know JJ Buchanan is nominally listed as a tight end, but he's a wide receiver, right? I think that Zach Marshall showed a lot of promise, but I think think back to fall camp. I had asked the question of Steve Kasula. Is there anyone that feels like an heir apparent to Colston Loveland that looks the closest to replicating his type of game? And he said Deakon Tonielli. And we've been talking about him on the show for years, like a broken record. And only this past year did it just at least slightly pay off. He made a couple really big plays, and that was really good to see. So I think that, they got to get some tight end involved. It's him, Zach Marshall. It's, I'm blanking. There's an obvious one out there that I'm just blanking on. The injured guy. Oh, Hogan Hansen. Hogan Hansen, I think, is still the likely candidate. It's just that Deakon Tonielli, I think, is the most primed to put himself in the conversation. Last, I've got Shamari Earls, cornerback. Both returning starters coming in. He had some injury issues last year, some youth issues, some immaturity issues. A lot of those things I think will be solved this year. Still got the same depth ahead of him, But now you're playing for keeps in a way that you weren't before. And I think he's got all those types of things that you want. He's got the length. He's got the speed. You got to get him to not make dumb mistakes, penalties, and things like that, which is kind of what we saw when we saw him out there a little bit. But, he was the guy that was most thought to be like, if someone's going to take over for Will Johnson, it's Shamari Earls. That's still true. As much as they talk about, we just think Jair Hill, he can just be that dude. I think Shamari Earls can come in and be that guy where the casuals are like, where did he come from? Who's he? Right? Because keep in mind, there's a lot of if you're watching or listening to this show, you probably know who all the recruits are and everything. But, my grandma doesn't know. My grandma, if she's watching, she watches pretty much every game. She's like, oh, who's that? I didn't know. I remember her that specifically, going from Chris Perry to Mike Hart. Oh, wow. I mean, granted, I didn't know either at that time. But all right, let's talk some basketball. We got a lot more to get to. We're just being all willy-nilly over here. So we're going to do that here in just a moment. But before we do this, is Mazda's moving the game forward for those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. Just like when Michigan found itself in a battle with UCLA at halftime, it regrouped and then it went lights out. The Wolverines shot 78.3% from the floor in the second half while holding the Bruins to just 26%, and it was a group effort. No one was super hot. 9 players all scored within the final 20 minutes of the 30-point win. This is a type of moment that reminds us of what it really takes to raise the bar. Is the extra work off the court, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, that grit, and I never quit. We put the same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel, but what it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. All right, we've got more coming up here momentarily, but before we do, ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? Well, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, the Detroit Pistons. This is the perfect time to lock it in. I love futures this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or win a conference title. It adds an extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I don't know what minute we entered silly season on this show, but we did. We're there. That's exciting. That's good stuff. All right, so Michigan basketball. It's kind of funny. I'm writing my 5 takeaways with I started them with 8 minutes left, something like that. Something like that. It wasn't when I'm at a game, I often kind of start them. I start formulating them in, more so around halftime. You start kind of writing around halftime and might not have everything exact. But I'm trying to post it pretty close after the buzzer goes off, right, to end the game. And usually it's okay, I'm pretty close. I've got to tweak some things. I've got some blanks that I got to fill in. That they're doing poor with turnovers or really good at rebounding or whatever it might be. And you're like turnovers were the difference, or turnovers are why it was close, or, they did really good with turnovers. And you just put blank, right? And you just kind of fill it in after the fact. That's just some inside baseball. I had a whole part about hey, looks like they're only going to win by 10 or 12, and that's fine. That's good. Not everything can be a John Rothstein Michigan by TKO game. Until it was, right? That's the thing that made it insane. Then it just was. Then they just went nuts. More than midway through the second half. Just to look at it, it's interesting because there wasn't one obvious star. We've talked about this a lot in the last week about you have, Nimari Burnett was the star against Penn State, and Adai Mara was the star against Ohio State. And, you obviously hoped for Adai Mara that he could be the star in this one because it's against his former team. And that's the first time that, Roddy Gale went up against Ohio State, but he's already done that. This was Adai first time. It's the first one of these transfers that gets that opportunity. Next will be Morez Johnson when he plays Illinois on February 27th. But this wasn't like a moment where like Amara had some really big shots down the stretch, right? Like he was sitting at 4 for a lot of the game and then had his last 5 in the late, like not waning stages, but like when they were still kind of in process of pulling away. You had 4 guys in double digits and nothing just crazy. Yaxel, just the typical 17 and 8. Actually, before he even got there, I wrote like, yeah, Yaxel had his normal 17 and 8. The ho hum. Didn't have to change it. That's exactly where he finished. Morez Johnson Jr. 15 and 3. Namari Burnett had 12 and 0. I'm going rebounds, by the way. Like, I could add assists in there. LJ Kaysen continued to look good for the second or third straight game. He just continues to, I think it was the second straight game. 2 for 4 from 3, had 13 points in this one. He had a couple guys that, had 9 in Elliot Cadeau and Adai Mara. Trey McKinney only had 2 in this game. So he kind of cooled off from what we've seen him do. Like, remember, he had like 6-7 games in a row of having double digits. Roddy Gale with 5, Will Shetter, who, again, like kind of late in the game, kind of came alive. But the defense is what really was impressive in the second half, because it wasn't like they were like UCLA was shooting it lights out like some of these other teams. They were shooting 48.4%. That's like respectable. But then they only shoot 25.9%. Completely different deal. 1 of 10 from 3 after going 5 of 11. Right? Like, it didn't really ever feel like they were challenging Michigan, but then they got it to within 2 at halftime. So then suddenly everything just feels like, okay, maybe this is a game. Like, getting text messages like, oh, Michigan playing down to its opponent again. And then they're just like, yeah, no, forget this. Let's just go nuts. I mean, UCLA they're not world beaters, but they are like a solid team that is beating some other solid teams. But now it all starts, right? You got Purdue this week. You got Duke this week. Now it's getting real. It's the real world. What's that tagline? When things stop being blank and start being real. Okay, that's a good enough time to stop it. I'm not disappointing. Note. It's time to end. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you again on Tuesday. Peace.